I'm going to talk today about creativity. I'm very interested in the emergence of new thought, where it comes from, and how that might link to how we can influence community. But I don't want this talk to be about me. I want it to be about the content. And the guy on my far right and your left as you look at it is a guy called William Kellibrew. And William Kellibrew is a community influencer who brings new thought to issues such as trauma and how to recover from trauma. He's currently working on new ideas about how, rather than trauma-informed care, he's developing grandma-informed care. That puts grandmothers at the center of care for trauma victims, survivors of trauma. And I met William in 2008, and it's quite interesting because back then, and it's a horrible term, he was just another student. Nothing particularly stood out. And nowadays, by every measure that we can have, William is deemed this huge success, not because he wants to be, because he shares his ideas and new thought. Here he is in the garden of the White House after a meeting with the Vice President, Joe Biden. He was campaigning and trying to influence the community agenda at the national level via speaking about gun violence. And William is recognized by the Voice Awards for his work in the community, again addressing trauma victims. Here is another award he received, an Unsung Hero Award. And he's all over the internet nowadays, and you can check out and see him in the White House receiving President Obama's Champion for Change Award for his community work. Now, I'm going to go back to William in due course, because William, by his own admission, had no thought. He didn't have anything to contribute, and in fact, his voice was silenced for a long time. But before I do that, I just want to touch on a couple of principles of creativity, or particularly new thought. I talk in terms of creative endeavor and new thought. And we could ask, well, why is new thought important? Well, new thought's important because I believe in the Deleuzian notion that new thought benefits mankind. We need to become different to make progress. And we can see that on a broad level where economies need to progress so we have better living standards, and we need to progress from the Stone Age to where we are now. And on an individual level, I think it's even more important why we need creative endeavor to try and get new thought. Because new thought, again, the Deleuzian kind of definition is we need to become different. I need to leave this stage different to the person that came on. We need to leave this venue different to the people who came in. And becoming is great because for the people in the room who experience this, we know what it's like. When we get new ideas, our head goes crazy and it's like, wow, that's fantastic. And David Lynch, the film producer, he says, actually, it's life-enhancing as we develop new thought because we can be more fulfilled in how we experience the world. People who just do mundane regurgitation, functionaries of existing thought, don't get these wow feelings. It's just more of the same. So, the next slide, it's all crazy because creativity is addressed from a number of perspectives: psychological perspectives, biological perspectives, mystical perspectives. Elizabeth Gilbert, a TED talker, she outlines that there's a guiding spirit talks to her. Philosophical perspectives. This is my idea. I believe that we need all of it, not one perspective. We need to work hard and actively seek to produce fragments in our head, and we can draw from multiple sources. I put this slide together today, and the text in the middle, it doesn't matter if we can read or not. I left all the spelling mistakes in because it doesn't matter. Creativity is chaotic. It's not something we can do in 3 easy steps. So what we need to do is build up fragments drawn from skateboarding, Rodney Mullen, great ideas on TED Talk, dance, art, and everything else that's on there, technology, dangerous sports. That'll give us new perspectives if we're at the cutting edge and we risk it all. But I'll just concentrate on 3. Domain knowledge is a good starting point. Become expert in a particular domain, like William Kellibrew perhaps has become. Collide different ideas from every fragment and every experience we have. And collaborate within our communities. And just before I move back to the most important bit, William Kellibrew, when we collaborate or when people become successful, it's said, oh, well, they were born great. Steve Jobs, always born great, loads of creativity. I reject that notion completely. Most of the literature rejects that notion. We draw from fragments we put together. So, if I return, in 2008, this guy attended one of my seminars, just another student. He got up, and he was late, actually, for the seminar, 30 minutes late, and unprepared. I asked him to speak on a business topic. As he spoke, I started to get, I can't find the words, bemused, worried, concerned, surprised. And when he finished, I said to the group that was assembled just like this, I was standing away from them, I said, wow, that's amazing. I hope we all realize we'll never see anything like this again, ever. And I turned to William Kellibrew, and I'll just pick somebody in the audience, and said, I don't know where you are. Sorry, I don't know who you are. I don't know where you've come from. How can you be like this? Because new ideas poured out of him. You could feel something in the room that was electrically charged. And he was very, very modest, and he just said, I don't know what you mean. I said, no, we've never heard anything like this. Are you an avid reader? Have you had the best education money could buy? And he just continued modestly to say, I don't know what you mean. So, in the end, I think he tired of us, and he said, or I'll just take a step back, actually. One thing I did say, I said, you're a better speaker than I am, and I can tell you're a better person than I am. He had no achievements, he was a student. I don't think he'll mind me saying he was struggling on his course, and I think he hasn't yet finished. And that was back in 2008. So, in the end, he got tired of us pressing, and he said something unusual for 2008. If you want to know me, Google me. I thought, that's strange. So I did Google him. And this next part is quite difficult because what I found was horrifying. William Kellibrew is the guy in the blue shirt, and his brother, Anthony Cephas, is the guy in the yellow shirt. The two boys were left or were alone at home as their mother had fled from her increasingly violent boyfriend. Marshall Brent Williams had served an 11.5-year jail sentence for second-degree murder. William woke up that morning on July 2nd, 1984, to the sounds of his mother screaming and shouts of call the police as she was dragged into their front room by her hair. William, now in the living room, saw his mother grabbed by Marshall Brent Williams, and she was shot twice in the most brutal way, and she fell to the floor dead. As she lay there, Marshall grabbed Anthony, only 12 years old, and he shot Anthony, and he was also killed. He then grabbed William, and he squatted down in front of William, and he put the gun to his head. And William threw back his head and said, please don't kill me, I'll do anything. And William's words that he uses, he says something I think that sounds strange. He says, it didn't go anywhere. And what happened is Marshall Brent Williams stood up, paced around the room, and mumbled something that sounded like, you can go now. As William left the room and Marshall Brent Williams killed himself, William's world of possibilities was completely gone. And when I speak to him, he said, I had no thought, I couldn't even continue with life. And after 3 years without any help at 10 years old, he tried to commit suicide, and he then fell into gang culture, drugs, and he had nothing to offer, no thought, and he was silenced. His voice was silent for many years. So how did William get from that day, that photo was took around that time, to this, outside the White House and awards left and right? Well, if I talk to William, when I talk to William, he says that eventually he got ideas from his support community. But this took years. We're talking 15 years. And what he did, amongst many other things, I'm not saying creative thought changed his life, but a part of it was he started to read about how to cope with trauma. And what he found was, as his domain knowledge increased, he collided that domain knowledge with the help of the ideas existing and new from his community. And he also started to get ideas himself whilst reflecting on his own trauma. So all these collision of ideas, and he started to see a world of possibilities by being able to think in a different way. But we're talking 15 years to get to this point. And this is the only slide I've put some notes on. So I've already said those first 2 points, or those first 3 points. How does William continue now? He's the most uplifting, new thought, inspirational person I've ever seen. And it's all from he thinks differently to us. How does he do that? He experiences life, interacts with his community, and he builds fragments. He takes part in sports. He does conference after conference, and it's never about him. It's always about helping his community overcome trauma. So what can we learn from William Kellibrew? Well, what we can learn is that new thought opens up worlds of possibilities, and selfishly, if we can think new possibilities, we just spend our whole lives going, life's just fantastic. And some of you know this feeling. But what we can learn from William Kellibrew is we start at a higher level. We already have some thought. He couldn't speak for 15 years. He couldn't talk about his trauma. We don't have to go through that. So what we can do is we can start to build our fragments to stand shoulder to shoulder, influence our communities with William Kellibrew. And it doesn't matter whether it's big new thought or just new thought for us. We can influence and stop being selfish and create better worlds, because there's a lot of work to be done. And in closing, wow, what a joy. I've got 1 minute 36 seconds. In closing, this presentation is not about me. It's about new thought, building fragments, my kind of small idea, so we can contribute to making the world a better place. And I'm going to put this down because what I would like is to finish, and I don't want any recognition. I want us to applaud William Kellibrew, because he's an absolute hero and legend, and we can all think new thought like him. So if you'll join me, thank you, William. You're an inspiration.